So the grandson of Walter Chrysler wants to buy his company back, return it to America, return it to its former glory. And I've been asked to talk about it. So welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John, and I've been following this story for a little while, and one of my viewers asked me, hey, am I going to do a video talking about this? And at the time I responded with, I don't really think there's enough there yet to talk about. I wanted to see it develop a little bit, because this only came about on essentially August 22nd. The story behind it is that Frank Rhodes is the great-grandson of Walter Chrysler, the industrialist who formed Chrysler Corporation. At one time was one of the richest men in America. And he has been a brand ambassador for them for, I don't know, a long time now. And he's written an open letter to Stellantis saying that he wants to buy back his family's legacy. Return it to America, return it to American workers, return it to building things in America again, and return it to its former engineering and innovation glory. So that's the story, and that's where it sits right now. But that leaves with, what are our thoughts about it? So interestingly, the more I've read about this, the first thing is I've seen multiple articles, and they all slightly contradict each other. For example, one says that he wants to buy Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. One says he just wants Chrysler, Dodge. Those kind of differences, all right? And surprisingly, I see a very, very narrow path where he could actually make this occur. But if he did that and overcame insurmountable obstacles, that would be the easy part of his journey. And I've talked a lot about Chrysler recently, their struggles, they're being neglected by Stellantis, and even it's getting a lot of attention. I did an article about whether BYD makes sense for them, the Chinese electric company, to buy Chrysler. But we need to clarify one thing here real quick, because there's been some confusion. There's Chrysler Corporation, which is now part of Stellantis, and then there's Chrysler, the brand. And I get a lot of people who get confused that I'm talking about Chrysler, the brand, and they think I'm talking about Chrysler, the former corporation, which includes Jeep and Ram. So let's get into this, there is a narrow path here. And the way he introduced this to the world is really twofold. First is he released this open letter, and it went over on MoparInsiders and talked about the problems, I'll get to that in a minute, and what he wants to do. But then he also had a video made in apparently his garage talking about the legacy and the engineering excellence that Chrysler used to have, them being the arsenal of democracy in World War II and their innovations through the space program. It's pretty good, as a matter of fact. But the point here is he talks in the letter about buying Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. So from there, I think it's a non-starter, because Stellantis's profit mostly comes from North America, and all of that is, or most of that, is from Jeep and Ram. They're never going to let their golden goose go. But from Stellantis to Fiat before, to Cerberus before, to Daimler before that, Chrysler brand has been starved of product. They've now canceled the 300, which means they only have a minivan. Dodge has been starved as well. So while they've recently taken an Alpha SUV and given it to them, they've also canceled the Charger and the Challenger. And there's been talk that there's going to be, we've got a concept vehicle. We're probably going to send it over here, in 3 years. Those kind of things. I thought there was such an amazing opportunity for Stellantis, but they're not getting behind these two brands. And with Carlos Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis, saying that if a brand's not making profit, it could be on the chopping block. I can see Chrysler and maybe Dodge just being cut entirely. So it makes sense to me that you've got Frank Rhodes over here, and he wants to buy his family's legacy back. This would be the time to do it. Now, I don't know Mr. Rhodes personally, and I don't know how much stock investments in cash have passed down over 3 or 4 generations to him. But if you look at the video where he's talking about the past legacy of his family and of Chrysler, well, it doesn't look like he's in Jay Leno's garage exactly. And if you dig a little bit deeper, it turns out he's a furniture maker, or he's a restorer. Let's put it that way. I suspect he's comfortable enough, but I don't think that he has the billions of dollars it will take to buy 2 brands from Stellantis. So he's got to work with other people. So in his letter to Carlos Tavares and Stellantis, he actually says, the Chrysler brand, once a symbol of innovation and America's ingenuity, is now at the risk of fading into obscurity due to what I believe are poor decisions and mismanagement by its current owners. Ouch. That's awesome. But he goes on a little bit later to criticize Tavares for his nearly $40 million pay package, and saying that while they're letting this brand languish, why is this man continuing to make so much money? He goes on after that to say that, well, with the coming Chinese wave, it's even more critical to shore up these brands and invest in them. And of course, I'll provide a link to this MoparInsider article below so you can go read the letter for yourself. And then we get to the key part here. He actually stands with the UAW in their recent threat to strike Stellantis because Stellantis might be closing down a factory. But then he says, I propose creating a new Chrysler Corporation with workers as part owners of the company. This would give them a stake in the success of the company, ensure their jobs are secure. So I know that all of my viewers who are more conservative just had the hairs on the back of their neck stand up. But let's stop here for a minute. As much as I have opinions about the UAW, and especially about their current leader, Shawn Fain, the fact is that when the chips are down and when companies are in danger, the UAW has long supported revisions and bailing out, companies. So if you've got Rhodes, he's going to need bankers and investors, venture capital firms, whatever. But by bringing in the workers, it aligns them with the corporation's long term. And this isn't unheard of. When GM declared bankruptcy, the UAW was part of the solution. In fact, they got enough stock out of the new GM to have a board seat. Now, something they fought for literally decades. What did they do? They sold off their stock until they lost their board seat. But I think the UAW could be critical to helping to build a new Chrysler. They need outside money to make this happen. And Frank Rhodes. And this is where it all starts to fall apart. So there's a very narrow window right there. Very narrow path where this actually could happen. But here's the downsides. Number one, is Stellantis really going to want to spin off 2 brands to create another competitor to themselves? I don't think so. Are investment bankers going to want to invest in a corporation that, I'll talk about why more in a minute, when like Cerberus got burned so bad? I don't think so. And part of this is what I've heard with the difference in reporting on this, whether they're buying 2 brands or 4 brands, is that he wants Chrysler the brand, Dodge, the rights to a Plymouth name, and Mopar. Ding! I see that, and I see a crystal clear picture of what the future new Chrysler would look like. Plymouth would be your broad band, and Dodge would be more sporty. Chrysler would be up here, being built as a slightly more premium brand along with the everything else. But the question rolls back to, if this came to fruition, while I appreciate Mr. Rhodes' passion, his family legacy, that doesn't equip you to run a corporation. If it did, then I encourage Mary Barra to give me a call and start Saturn again, because I'll work as CEO and my salary requirements would be very affordable in today's market. But that's not enough to run one. Passion and belief is not enough. You have to have experience. So they would have to find experienced leadership. In fact, I think it would be a requirement for any bankers and the UAW bring in leadership that would lead it. So what they would need is another Lee Iacocca. Where is that today? Maybe Mark Fields? I don't know. If you've got any ideas on who would lead this perfect new Chrysler Corporation, let me know below. But nobody really springs to mind, personally. But let's say this all happens. Let's say his dream comes true. Stellantis sells. They get the brands. They get a factory. They get a headquarters, maybe 2 factories. Who knows? The UAW buys in. It's kumbaya. Everybody's happy. They're moving forward. Great. What do they have to sell? What they have to sell are former Stellantis platforms, engines, and transmissions. So one of 2 things has to happen here. First off, they need to start making money immediately because you know what bankers like? Being paid back. So they have to do one of 2 things. The first is partner with another firm or spend billions upon billions of dollars more to have another lineup of products 5 and 10 years in the future. And this is where it all falls down. That's why I said buying the company, as nearly as impossible as it will be, would be the easy part. Because let's say you go, how much is Chrysler, Dodge, the Plymouth name, Mopar, a factory and a headquarters going to cost? Well, when Fiat rescued Chrysler, it was about $5 billion for Chrysler and about 5.5 for their pension liabilities. So I think it's fair to say, taking the 2 weakest brands, but with some other stuff, 5 to 7 billion. What do you think? Let me know. So $5 to $7 billion. Now, it is also not unfair to say every time you develop a new car, it's about $2 billion. So let's say they invest a lot of money to develop a totally flexible platform that could be used from a small sport utility to a large sport utility, maybe a truck, because they could launch their own truck brand now because Ram's gone. They make it battery, hybrid, and internal combustion. They invest in the best platform in the world. That's 5 years away. They've spent $10 billion to get to that point to launch production of new vehicles. Who is coming to the table with $15 to $20 billion to roll out and gamble on what might be the new Chrysler Corporation? So the only way to make this work, in my mind, would be a partnership with another brand that already has platforms, engines, transmissions, powertrains, and everything else that they could share. And money to bring to the table. Oh, for a foothold in the American market. No matter how you slice it, this comes back to a Chinese backup. Now, maybe you put together a combination of Chinese money, banking money, UAW, the $20 I can bring from my wallet, and the Chinese manufacturer keeps a minority stake in it, but can provide the platforms and engineering expertise while things ramp up. I'm not saying I want that. I'm not saying I prefer that. I'm not saying that I want Chrysler diluted. I want old Chrysler back. I want excellent engineering and excellent style and a full lineup of American-made vehicles. But I don't see it happening without some outside money, and I don't see that outside money without it being a Chinese brand that wants to break in here. So I just don't think it's going to happen. But it is exciting to think about, isn't it? Let me know what you think below, guys. Thanks.